The summer I was 10. The old house by the harbour wore the light like a cloak, and cicadas stitched the heat into the air until the walls themselves hummed with it. We spent those days in a hush of bright windows and wooden floors that never quite looked the same in the noon glare. Mara, my cousin, a year younger and braver than I, would dare the steep stair that disappeared into the dark, and I would follow, not because I wished to be bold, but because the house seemed to lean its ear toward us, listening for our breath to mingle with its own tired breath. The grandmother, the woman who kept us from wandering away into the sea's rumour, would stand in the kitchen with her apron dusted in flour and sea salt, as if she wore both bread and saltiness on her skin, and she would tell us of a ritual we must keep whenever the day grew too bright to trust. Not for fear, she would say in that gentle, unhurried voice that could make even the window frame seem patient, but for memory. Memory remembers us even when we forget. She spoke the words as if they were a recipe, and perhaps they were. The ritual was simple, and in its simplicity lay the slow ache of it. We would place a bowl of sea salt on the sill, a small seashell beside it, as if the shell might catch whatever sound we could not hear, and a length of blue ribbon, old as the house, tied to the doorknob of the back kitchen door. Mara and I would sit on the floor and watch the light pool along the boards while the grandmother spoke the name of the one who had vanished from the summer, the one we would not name aloud except within the circle we had learned to inscribe with our fingers on the dusty floor. A breath, a departure, a return, seen only in the corner of the eye. Mara's mother had spoken of Mara's father as if he had been a thread that broke in the fabric of the season and never mended. We were told to name him only in that quiet ritual, to lay the shell's listening surface to the world outside, and to let the salt in the bowl catch whatever might still be listening, the way a fish might catch the current it cannot swim against. The grandmother said the house remembers, and so it did not betray us to forget. So we remembered. On one such afternoon, a heat wave pressed its palm to the glass, and the air grew thick with a memory no one had spoken aloud. The stairs sighed when Mara and I climbed them, a sound that did not belong to wood or breath, but to something older, something that waited in the shadows between floorboard and ceiling. The light struck the shell with a pale blue edge, as if a moon were wedging itself through our windows and drilling a new little hole in the day. The ribbon fluttered in the false current of the doorway and then settled, as if the house itself decided to be still for a moment to listen to us listen. That night, after the salt had dissolved in the light of the window, after the grandmother's soft lullaby told us to sleep with the hush of the ocean at our ears, Mara vanished from the room as surely as she had appeared to climb those stairs. The house did not howl. It exhaled, slow and aching, and the morning brought with it the slow ache of absence. A rumour that Mara had gone away to a new town and would write us letters when her eyes learned to read the map of the world without fear. The grandmother touched my shoulder with a tenderness that could have broken a heart, and she told me not to forget the feeling of the shell against my ear when the wind swirled past the sill, the way it sounded like a whisper of someone who had once lived here and hoped to be heard again. Years drifted like boats in a fog, and the harbour's salt became a memory I could smell in winter, a thing I carried with me as a map I never unfolded completely. The house stood through all of it, stubborn and patient, a patient old animal that forgot nothing, even as the towns beyond us grew faster, brighter, louder. Mara's chair, the one we used to pull toward the table for the ritual, remained in the corner of the kitchen, long after she was gone from that summer. A stubborn little balance of wood and memory that would not disappear. The shell lay where we had placed it, gleaming faintly as though it remembered being touched by waves. The blue ribbon, however, had frayed to a thread, then vanished into the little creases of the doorframe, as if the house itself had swallowed it. In the attic, among trunks and old maps, I found a small brass box, the sort of thing a child would stash away in the most careful way. It was half open, and inside lay a single scrap of paper, the edge of a photograph peeking out. The paper itself creased with a lifetime of unexpected folds. The photo showed Mara, not as a girl, but as a shadow-tinted image of a girl, pale as seashell, her hair catching the light in a way that could have been a memory rather than a face. On the back, in the careful ink a child might use, someone, perhaps Mara, perhaps another version of her, had written in my mother's handwriting, "For the day when you need to remember me, for the day when I forget how to be here." A chill ran through me that was not only the cold of a dusty attic, but the knowledge of a hard, sorrowful truth. The ritual had not brought Mara back to us. It had bound her to the house as a thing the house could keep and know. Not a person, not a presence, but a memory wearing a name and a face and a breath that could be felt on the nape of the neck when no one else stood close enough to touch. The house never forgot. It kept the memory of Mara in its walls, in the grain of the floorboards, in the dampness that clung to the back of the throat when the rain came heavy and the ocean spoke with a language no one else remembered. I set the brass box in the palm of my hand and felt the weight of all the summers carried inside it. The bright days, it was a weight I carried while I walked the harbour town in midlife, while my own hands grew rough with work and wind, while the months came and went with the same careful rhythm as the sea's unspoken promise. The memory matured, and I learned that I did not merely remember Mara. Mara remembered me back, through the rooms of a house that would, in time, become the only thing left of us. The house kept something larger than a person, and it kept it with a tenderness that was almost a grief. There were nights when the walls exhaled a sigh so old it sounded like the breath of a grandmother long gone, and I lay listening, certain that somewhere beyond the ceiling a child's laughter would begin again, only this time not for Mara or for me, but for the house's own sake. The laughter of something that had always belonged to it, something that could not be banished by weather or time. And perhaps that is the cruel mercy of the memory we fear most. It does not die when a person dies. It